our agenda is...
Yeah, I guess I can take over at this point, right?
Okay, yeah, that's fine, thanks.
All right, good. Sorry again, guys, for the technical difficulties there in the beginning. So let me go back a slide here and see if we can get this. There we go. Okay, so let me just start off by going through the agenda here briefly. We're going to start off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are. We're going to discuss the fear of the unknown when it comes to the cloud. The big question, should I actually virtualize? We'll briefly review some of the hardware virtualization benefits, then we'll move on to the software virtualization benefits. And then we're going to get into the meat of the discussion. We're going to talk about the different cloud and virtualization providers and their considerations. What should we be thinking about? Then we're going to, again, a little bit deeper, we're going to start talking about more of the specific things that we should be thinking about when choosing a provider. Next, we're going to be talking about actions that you can actually take today without having to, plan ahead and, drop your credit card and things like that. We will then start reviewing some key takeaways, and then Anne-Marie will jump in and tell you about a promotional offer that we have, since you're so kind to sit through our technical difficulties. All right, so let's begin. First off, who we are, and I guess why do you want to listen to us? Well, we are a longtime business partner with Esri. We've been in Charleston, South Carolina since 1997. We are also a Microsoft partner, and very soon we'll be a Citrix partner. Around 2010, we really expanded our cloud offerings. That was really a big deal. It was a big jump for us. Together, we have over 50 years of combined GIS experience. That's probably more than that now, but we'd like to keep some of our ages secret, right? So what do? We are custom application developers for the entire Esri product line. Of course, we specialize in certain aspects more than others, but generally speaking, we will work with just about every Esri product. We are also a ArcGIS server application service provider. That means briefly that we can host ArcGIS server map services for you without you incurring that license fee. So we can host your services on our server and serve them to you. We're also a ArcGIS Online specialty partner. We specialize also in software virtualization, and we are an infrastructure provider. With all that comes managed services, which again, we're all going to dig into a little bit deeper as we move along. This is the one I love. This is about me. That's me, dorky me.
You're so handsome.
Yeah. That's me sitting at my desk. Little background on me. I went to the State University of New York at Albany, and I graduated in 1994 with a degree in geography. Not many of us actually went to school for what we do, but geography was it for me back then, and it still is now. I joined Rock Technologies in the late 90s, in 1998, and I have been doing internet mapping since then. At heart, I am a technical architect. I am an ArcGIS server addict. I love working with it. I'm also an Android nerd, an Android enthusiast. And in my off time, I am a avid gardener. I like to grow my own vegetables, and I am a big Fish fan. If anybody knows the band Fish, yep, that's me. So let's start. When looking for a virtualization partner, I mean, that can mean a lot of different things to lots of different people. We could be talking about software virtualization, things like VMware, or we could be talking about all the other, various hypervisors that are available. Really, for the purposes of this webinar, I'm just going to be talking about cloud-based offerings. And these are companies that can virtualize your IT infrastructure, and more specifically, virtualize your hardware. Some of these companies that we're going to go through, or providers, can even virtualize your desktop software too. So if you can imagine launching ArcMap on a MacBook, or maybe you're creating a complex 3D based scene in ArcGIS Pro, but you're doing it on a Chromebook, and you could be doing this from the comfort of your home. That's really what Virtualize software is. And with the power of the cloud and virtualization, you can actually do this all right now. So let's jump in and we're going to take a look. What should we be looking for in a virtualization partner? Before we get there, let's just briefly talk about the giant elephant in the room, and that really is the fear of the cloud. The cloud is, still to many people, a really big unknown. I say let's just get right out in front of it and let's start talking about it. So people, first and foremost, are worried about control. Those servers are not down the hall anymore. These servers are in an unknown data center somewhere. So it's really not about, they're worried so much about control, they're worried about their lack of control when it comes to the cloud. So where is my data? Who can see my data? Who has access to it? And this is really a big issue for many people to overcome. Are you blindly handing over control of your mission critical data and your hardware and applications to an unknown entity? So what happens if something goes wrong? Do I pick up the phone and call 1-800-AMAZON and they're going to fix it right away? So as a GIS or IT person, I want to know, can I maintain that level of control that I am accustomed to when those servers were just down the hall? And can I really manage a full server stack in the cloud? These are really big questions that a lot of people have. And you should absolutely continue to ask them of yourself. We're going to dig in deeper in the presentation, but as we do, I want you to kind of keep these questions in mind. So the big decision time, should I virtualize? Should we virtualize in the first place? So let's be frank. GIS is really everywhere now. Most people don't even necessarily realize it, but they work with and view spatial data every single day. When I start my day, I open up Google Maps or Waze on my phone. I try to find the best route to work. That's GIS. If I'm on a road trip and I need a cup of coffee to keep me going, all I do is ask my phone where the nearest Starbucks is. That's GIS. Realtors, everyday citizens looking for flood zone information, that's all GIS. People depend on these data sets and applications like every day. So as a GIS person, you have become stewards of these systems, and you probably know all too well that the requirements to run them have become more and more complex as each day passes. Really, GIS has transitioned from making maps to now providing valuable decision-making data and mission-critical applications. So as your GIS grows, so have the requirements. Maybe you guys, if we got anybody on there that might remember we just had to open up ArcMap or even write some AML or AvenueScript. Well, that's not really the case anymore. Now we're all expected to manage these complex IT systems. We're expected to be web server admins. We need to manage an entire ArcGIS server stack. We need to be database administrators. And that on top, we have to manage all the hardware that you need. And in the end, we still have to provide our users a first-class experience. So, should I go out and hire a new system administrator and buy a new rack of servers? So in this day and age of the cloud, does an approach like that really make sense? Do I really want to go spend a whole bunch of money on a rack of servers that I'm going to stick down the hall? Make no mistake that the hurdles that we all face now are really surmountable. All those questions, we can get over them all. And this is especially true now that we can virtualize all of our hardware in the cloud. So the short answer, should you virtualize your hardware? And most of the time, in the vast majority of cases, it's really going to be a big yes. What are the hardware virtualization benefits? And I'm going to suspect that if you have gotten to this point and you're watching this webinar right now, you probably already know what the benefits of hardware virtualization is. Let me real quickly just run through them and make sure everybody's up to speed. First, pay-as-you-go. There's really no need for that upfront capital expenditure that will more than likely be outdated in a year. You can pay month to month, and in many cases, you can pay hour to hour for your hardware and computing needs. Only use what you need and only pay for what you need. That's a pretty fantastic proposition right there. So hardware in the cloud, in the most general sense, it's going to be able to provide you a wide variety of hardware. So we're talking from super fast, high-end CPUs to solid-state base storage and just huge amounts of memory and everything in between. So let's say, for example, you had a huge geoprocessing task that takes, hours and hours to run. What if you had access to a super fast, almost supercomputer? It could take that task and run it and complete that in just mere minutes. So when it's done, you just turn off the server. You don't need to pay for it if you're not using it, right? So think of it this way. 5 minutes in the cloud for a couple of bucks, or would you rather tie up your local servers and workstations for an entire afternoon? That, to me, sounds like a pretty easy choice. Next, we're going to talk about your ability to quickly scale up in the cloud. And that's really one of the most compelling reasons to utilize a cloud-based infrastructure. Let me give you a really good example. Like I mentioned before, Rock, we host a lot of map services and applications for people all over the country. And we actually have several clients that are coastal counties in Florida. So during hurricane season, these map services and the applications, that specifically deal with hurricane evacuation information can see spikes that are in excess of 100 times or even greater of their normal traffic. One server simply could not handle it all. There's just no way. So during these periods, we can quickly scale up our resources effectively to meet that demand. So as the threat passes, the hurricane goes up the coast, we can then scale back down. If you think about it, what would the alternative be? What would the alternative be if we had physical servers, down the hall? They'd be basically sitting there idle for the majority of the year, only to be brought online for a week during hurricane season, right? If you hadn't budgeted for that second server, then what? Your users are going to come in when they're trying to escape a hurricane, and they're basically going to get locked out. Your single server system becomes totally overloaded, crashes, and becomes essentially useless. So hopefully you can see the benefits of a scalable cloud architecture, right? It should be crystal clear in these types of cases. Next, one thing I really like to touch on is just the depth of management tools that can be utilized in a cloud environment. You can very quickly deploy new servers, clone existing ones, monitor all your incoming bandwidth and your outgoing bandwidth. You can monitor your storage. Basically, you can view and manage all aspects of your entire infrastructure through a single web portal. And to me, that is just amazing. Oops, I skipped a slide here, sorry. All right, there we go. So, software virtualization. Now, this is somewhat of a lesser-known aspect of the cloud. Software virtualization has really been around for a long time and has often been deployed historically within larger organizations. So in the pre-cloud days, these large organizations were the only entities that were capable of these large-scale virtualized desktops because of the sheer amount of hardware that was needed to power them. With the emergence of the cloud, that's just not the case anymore. This powerful hardware can be provisioned in just a couple of minutes. So really, what is software virtualization anyway? In short, it's the ability to launch a desktop class application and have it stream to any client, like a PC, like a Mac, or a tablet, Chromebook. And right there, it's going to behave and act just as it would if it was a native desktop application. All the high-end processing takes place on the cloud. Okay, so ask yourself, why would you want to virtualize your software anyway? Well, there's really tons and tons of reasons why it makes a lot of sense. We've done entire webinars on this, but I'm just going to hit a couple of key points. Have you ever had to upgrade to, let's just say, I know a lot of us are GIS folks, right? Have you ever had to upgrade to the latest patch of ArcGIS, or upgrade to 10.3.1 or 10.4 and update on a dozen or more workstations? Yeah, I feel your pain. Actually, I take that back. I used to feel your pain. In a virtualized environment, you update that application in one single place. And then the next time the user launches that application, the update is pushed. Every user has access to that same software version. No more wondering if everybody's on the same version number. We absolutely know that they are. Another biggie is your ability to use your virtual applications from anywhere. Let's say you had sick kids at home and you needed to stay home, but you also need to finish up a project for a presentation in ArcMap. That's not a problem. As long as you have an internet connection, you can launch and use your copy of ArcMap from basically anywhere. You can launch it from home, on the road, in the office, and you can do this all on any device. Like I said, tablets, PCs, Macs, Chromebook, and you're all while maintaining that same centralized data. If that's in SQL Server or file geo databases or whatever, your data is always going to be there. A lot of times, in many instances, we will virtualize GIS applications for offices that have multiple locations but still have that need to collaborate, like we're sitting next to each other. In many cases, it's really an ideal solution, especially in cases like that. So how does it work? In a general sense, what we're doing is we're taking advantage of the huge amount of compute resources that the cloud can offer us. Why should we purchase and continually upgrade workstations to run our desktop apps when we can run them on a cloud server where the CPUs and memory are all plentiful? Why don't we take advantage of them and run those really hefty compute and memory hungry applications, ArcMap, on the server and just display it on the client? It makes sense, doesn't it? It turns out it also makes a lot of economic sense. Think about it. 10 high-end workstations is a heck of a lot more expensive than a cloud-based server. And again, it even makes sense now to virtualize your desktop software with just one user. We don't have to reach back to the old days where they were only available to large-scale implementations. Start with just one user, and what happens when you need to add another one? You add one, you add another one. You just scale that cloud-based server up to accommodate the new load. Well, we didn't go into a lot of depth here about software virtualization. Like I said, we've done entire webinars on the project. Feel free, if you want to drop me an email, to see them. We have them archived somewhere, and I'd be more than happy to share those with you. And okay, so now we're going to get down to business. How do we actually choose a cloud provider? So let's start by reviewing three sort of generalized buckets, or these are tiers of providers. First off, we have the big boys. We've got the Googles, the Microsofts, and really the super duper big boy, Amazon. These guys have endless amounts of computing resources. They have data centers everywhere. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the mid-sized providers. These are the guys that maintain most of the benefits of these big giant providers. Basically all the same benefits. They will at some point be a little bit pricier. That's possible. Typically, the trade-off is going to be the level of support you get. And they'll often be more specific to specialized industries. And then we have the small providers. These are sort of the mom and pop shops. Usually they're going to service just a single client. All right. So here are three of the big providers we'll touch on. We have Microsoft Azure, we have Amazon's EC2 service, and all its other companion offerings. There's lots of Amazon offerings. But now the latest in the game is the Google Cloud Platform. Generally speaking, these three, as well as other large-scale providers that you'll find, there are plenty of them out there, they maintain basically a pretty comparable offering across the board. They're all going to try to differentiate themselves in some way, and some do in some aspects, but generally speaking, they're all going to give you similar stuff, which is what? Access to world-class hardware at the press of a button, and of course a swipe of your credit card. You can chain together hundreds of servers with the compute power of a virtual supercomputer that can crunch through some of the most intensive tasks in no time. When you're done, you can just simply turn it off and only pay for what you used. Easy as that. Piece of cake. Just as you can start with 100 servers, you can also start with one and scale up as your demand increases. The ability for these providers to quickly scale, or I call it hyperscale, is really unparalleled. If you need to add a new server to the cluster, you just click a button. Need a dozen more identical servers? Just click a button. It's basically that easy. If you have the need for this type of, if you're in this type of scenario or have this need for this type of deployment, going with one of the big boys is really going to be your best bet. But now that we have all these big players in the space, one of the great things that's happened is competition. This competition has continued to drive prices down. They have essentially commoditized the hardware market at this point. So unlike most services that you see, pricing on hardware is actually going down instead of up. What may have cost you $1,000 last year, you can now do with $700. So this type of thing has been great for users, including ourselves. So what are the downsides of using one of these very large-scale providers? Well, first, and this is not such a big deal, but I thought I'd mention it, you're kind of stuck with their predefined machine types, right? A specific type of server. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a huge variety of the different machine types, but still you might need to make some adjustments on exactly what you need. The exception now is the Google Cloud Platform, who will actually allow you to specify exactly what you want. Meaning, I need exactly 4 cores and exactly 32 gigs of RAM, or I need 8 cores and 8 gigs of RAM. You can specify the size of that machine exactly, right? That's pretty cool. So, while all the big players have made strides to make this whole transition for you easier, like deploying a virtualized server as easy as possible, there are still some technical intricacies that maybe the normal user might find difficult when getting started. And this really leads to the big issue with the big players, and that's support. Definitely, these providers have extensive help systems that are going to help you figure out how to manage all the firewall ports, mount your disk volumes, upgrade your machine, add new hardware resources, clone, and on. But really, that's going to be about it. At that point, you're pretty much on your own, meaning you're still going to be responsible for keeping all of that hardware up, all of your networking tasks, and you're, of course, going to be responsible for keeping your applications running optimally, and all those management tasks that are associated with it. Next, we're going to talk real briefly about the smaller shops. I'd like to call these guys sort of the mom and pop shops. Most often, these types of providers will service one or maybe a few clients, and those are going to make up pretty much the large bulk of their business. So, why would you want to go with one of these types of providers? Really, the big potential benefit here is you could get some pretty amazing customer service. If you're just one of a couple of clients, you're pretty much going to be guaranteed to get extremely hands-on customer assistance. Problem is, you're also going to pay. You're going to pay pretty dearly for that. I can tell you that the small scale folks, they're not going to be able to come close to the large scale players in terms of pricing. At least on the hardware alone. You can also pretty much assume that you're not going to have too many options, pretty much if any options, on the types of hardware you're going to get. Basically, this is more of a one-size-fits-all approach with little or no ability to scale. I guess short of them ordering a new server from Dell to get delivered, but that's exactly the point. That's what you're trying to avoid. Because of this, you're also likely not to have any kind of pay-as-you-go options, and you're going to be probably locked into a long-term contract. Now, I don't want to give the idea that I'm totally discounting these types of providers altogether. There are some business cases for these, especially when a complete and very strong hands-on approach is needed. And then the last of the provider types, and these are the mid-size shops. For us GIS folks, and actually other industries as well, I find this to be the sweet spot. Yes, I'm going to give you full disclosure. ROC is one of these mid-tier providers, but there are plenty of other ones out there to choose from. The mid-size players really maintain, there's a couple of different models, but for the most part, they maintain their own hardware, but it's been deployed in a cloud-based model. So we take a very large pool of managed resources and architect our own hybrid private cloud. So why does this approach make sense? Well, first, the pricing on these mid-tiers are going to often be very competitive with the big providers. Thankfully, and again, the economies of scale have really kicked in here. Hardware, like I said before, has become a commodity. And there will be some pricing differences, generally speaking, but they're going to be pretty competitive. Another positive for the mid-sized guys is that we're boutique enough to offer specialized customer service. We are, they're not so massive that we're going to necessitate a call center in India. I mean, I'm kidding, of course, but really, especially when focused on a particular industry like GIS or engineering, they have the experienced staff on hand to help you through issues that will always arise when you're trying to maintain a specialized server stack like ArcGIS server, or optimizing a geodatabase, or making sure that the right firewall port is open for SQL Server. And to be honest with you, that's what really differentiates the mid-sized tiers from the rest. It's their ability to support your servers and your applications when you need them the most. And a lot of times we will refer to this aspect as managed services. Basically, you can have someone else manage your servers for you, all while maintaining the benefits of that cloud-based infrastructure that we talked about before. We're still going to have that core ability to scale up rapidly like the big players. And also maintaining something like an enterprise level ArcGIS server or a big SQL Server cluster is no easy task. Keeping these apps and servers running at optimal speed is even tougher. A managed services approach lets you focus on your core work and competencies, all while not having to actually worry about maintaining that server stack and all those crazy little quirks that go along with it. So I talked about the good stuff. Let me hear about some of the bad stuff. What are some of the things that might give you pause when choosing, a mid-tier provider? First, if you've got some extreme hardware requirements, like launching hundreds of servers for a specific task, or if you need to hyperscale from one instance to 100 with the click of a button, these players are likely not able to maintain that capability for that type of approach. Another one that maybe play a role for you, and the mid-tiers are not necessarily a pure pay-as-you-go model, right? With the big players, you have the ability to just pay for hours or minutes of server time, and the mid-sized providers will usually need something a little bit longer, something like a month-long commitment. So those are the main categories of cloud virtualization providers. Now, let me talk a little bit more about software virtualization. We did touch on this earlier, but these really are worth repeating. In short, software virtualization pushes the workload of these resource-hungry desktop applications whose requirements seem to grow with each year, and it passes it over to the cloud where the resources are available and scalable. All of the high-end processing is done in the cloud, and the results are simply streamed to the client. And seriously, I'm going to tell you 100% truth here. When I need to work, and this is, I think, true of everybody here in our office, when we need to work on Arc Catalog or ArcMap, I would strongly prefer to use my virtualized version over a local version on my laptop. It launches faster, and the performance is way more than I'm ever going to get off my laptop. And that's really the key takeaway. I don't really have to worry about what kind of client I'm using. I don't have to worry. I could be sitting here on a Chromebook that can barely run a web page. I could be using a 6-year-old laptop. I could be running ArcMap off a Wi-Fi connection in Starbucks, and it's still going to perform like a beast because I'm using those cloud resources to run the application. So when you're looking to virtualize your software, what do you look for in a provider there? And quite honestly, right now, this question is a little bit tougher. The only one of the real big players that offers such a thing is Amazon, and it's called Workspaces. Again, if you have the internal resources and the know-how to get all of this up and running and connected to your back-end infrastructure, like Esri's License Manager and SDE and ArcGIS Server, Amazon Workspaces is really a good one to look at. It basically provides you a virtualized desktop that you can launch from anywhere. And second, well, maybe not there quite yet, there have been some pretty strong indications that Microsoft will be rolling out their own very similar offering pretty soon. Okay, then we have other providers out there, again, such as Rock, that specialize in these types of offerings. A key differentiation is that we have always been focused on GIS, and we know the workflows that GIS users need. So when you consider that core GIS experience that we have with our extensive IT knowledge, this solution becomes pretty compelling. Also, if you will please forgive me one shameless plug, I should mention our Instant Enterprise offering. In short, it really marries software virtualization like ArcMap or Arc Catalog with a real powerful GIS-focused back-end infrastructure. Stuff like enterprise-level geodatabases and a fully managed hosted ArcGIS server. Basically, you use the apps you need to get your work done, and we will manage all the heavy lifting behind the scenes with our hosted SQL Server and ArcGIS Server. So let's get down to considering our choices. There are really a lot of providers out there that can effectively virtualize your hardware, and I discussed a few that can actually help virtualize your software. So how do you make that choice? Who do you want to choose? Well, honestly, it really all comes down to your needs. What does your organization want to accomplish, and what resources do you have available to you? If you must have the ability to hyperscale, or if you need that supermassive compute power, one of the big boy providers is going to be the best way for you to go. If you have some heavy but maybe infrequent workloads like long geoprocessing tasks, the big players pay-as-you-go model is still going to be very, very compelling. Spin that server up for a few hours, run your processing tasks, and turn it off when you're done. And you'll only get charged for when that server was on and active. Take it from me, don't forget to shut that machine down when you're done, or at the end of the month you're going to get a rather large and somewhat unexpected bill. That happened to me back in the early days, and I think it happens to folks all the time now as they get more experience, as they start experimenting in the cloud. But one thing, let's not forget, when we're talking about using, one of the big players, you're also going to need that IT staff and the time to manage everything. And that's really something that gets frequently overlooked. I've truly seen many customers dive headfirst with, the ArcGIS server, Amazon, AMI cloud instances that Esri pushes, only to abandon it a few months later because they were not able to properly manage it, right? If you have the IT staff to manage that stuff, then that's a great, fantastic, compelling reason. But you got to remember, these really are still very complex applications, just as they would be if they were on your local network down the hall. They really do. They still need that same care, that same attention in a virtualized cloud environment as well. So what about choosing a small shop for your virtualization needs? Well, I'll be honest, it can be tough to make a good case for such a scenario. But if you need to get all of your servers off-premise and someone to manage every single tiny aspect of that, then their potentially strong customer support could be a good reason. Most mid-sized providers can also offer this level of service too, but without the worries of kind of what could happen in a smaller shop. Smaller shops will often not have that hardware and other infrastructure redundancies like backup power or safety access controls to the data center. These all need to be in place to ensure that your servers are always up, backed up and protected. So I would proceed with caution if you choose this route. Again, this is going to lead us to the mid-sized providers, which again, truly I feel is a sweet spot for many folks like ourselves. To recap, their prices are often going to be competitive with the bigger players, but they're going to offer an extra level of support when you need it. And this is especially true in types of like niche industries such as GIS or in engineering. That support can go a long way to get you up and running successfully. That support can then extend into managed services where the staff can manage some or all aspects of your server stack, like taking care of the firewall issues or running your database backups or tuning your map services, things like that. Some can even virtualize your desktop software, which really is a very fast-growing piece of the cloud. You're going to see more and more of this as the months and years go by. And if you think about it, all of those positives can save you money on both hardware and support. But let's take the good with the bad. Let's take the bad with the good, and let me be clear. All of those things don't mean that you don't have to do your research. Make sure you know about their facilities. Make sure you know about the types of securities they have in place. And again, I should mention that if you need that mass compute power or that really super duper granular type of hourly billing, the mid-sized guys are not going to be the way to go. You're going to need to go to something like an Amazon EC2 or a Microsoft Azure. So how do we prepare for this big move to the cloud? How do we prepare for our virtualization partner? Again, I can't really stress this one enough. You have to know your organizational needs. Start asking questions internally. Will a move to the cloud alleviate the pain points that we're experiencing? What level of service do I need from a cloud provider? Can I really manage, maintain, and optimize a full cloud-based server stack with my current staffing levels, right? So what are you going to do? First thing I would do is I'd get out there and I'd start signing up for all the free trials. All of the players out there that I've talked about will let you try their services out in some capacity. The top tier Amazon, Microsoft, Google folks, they're going to let you spin up and they call them micro instances. And they're going to let you spin up these basically virtual machines for free. Usually for a somewhat limited period of time, but they're great for you to get your feet wet, get in and test the cloud waters. It's basically a full-fledged virtual machine in the cloud. It's not going to be a real beefy machine, but it's certainly going to get you started. So when it's time to go big, you're going to be ready. The mid-size shops will often have similar types of programs. I can speak specifically to Rock, but we always encourage people to test out our services before you buy them. We want you to know the level of service that you're going to be getting when you choose us. We've dedicated some pretty high-end hardware to our hosted offerings, and to be honest with you, we don't mind showing that off a little sometimes. So if you're looking to see, what your performance and your workflows would look like in a cloud environment, you can try out a hosted map service with your data right now for free. Not a problem. If you're interested to know how virtualized software works, maybe you want to launch ArcMap or just basically any desktop application from the cloud, you want to know, is Jason telling me the truth? Is it really that good? Just ask. We can hook you up with an account and you can try it out for yourself. And lastly, we haven't talked about this much, but I'd like to touch on the importance of starting to use ArcGIS Pro right now. We all know that it's the future of the Esri desktop platform. As time goes on, much like we experienced, or hopefully some of us experienced, the ArcView to ArcMap transition years ago, ArcGIS Pro is going to become the de facto application for desktop GIS. Okay, so why am I mentioning this in a talk about choosing a virtualization provider? Well, I'll tell you why. ArcGIS Pro was designed in such a way that it practically begs to be virtualized. And if you've ever used ArcGIS Pro before, you know that this thing is seriously heavy on the CPU and it loves eating up as much memory as you'll give it. It requires some pretty high-end hardware and even a new piece of hardware that us GIS folks have not previously had to think about. It requires a powerful and expensive graphics card. So when it comes time to start, purchasing, these new workstations to meet these pretty hefty requirements for ArcGIS Pro, think about using the cloud instead. That's where the CPUs and the memory and the graphics cards are found in abundance. So here are the key takeaways. We need to accept our new reality. GIS has become more and more focused on IT in general. Its requirements both on hardware and management skills continue to grow each year. Virtualizing and taking advantage of the cloud resources, it just makes sense these days. Okay? I don't want you to just jump in and start spinning up servers. Okay? I want you to know what your organizational needs are before jumping in. You can research and you can understand all the different providers and all the different provider levels that are out there. Find out which one can work best for you. And by all means, go ahead, get your feet wet with virtualization in the cloud now. Try all those free services that I described that are out there. You can try them right now. And lastly, you have to start thinking about your budget. Are you thinking about upgrading your servers, your physical servers soon? Will those servers be enough for you in 5 years? Can you keep up with your demand? Or perhaps a huge capital expenditure purchase up front. They're going to sit idle until your demand catches up. It's a big economic issue that you're going to need to think about and budget for in the coming months and years to come. All right, so that leads us to the end, and Anne-Marie, she's going to jump in, and she's going to tell us how we can take our first step toward virtualization. I'd also like to say, after Anne-Marie does this, please feel free to ask any questions or drop me an email. That's my email at the bottom. I eat this stuff up. I love talking about it. We all love talking about it here at Rock. I will 100% give you unbiased advice. So please feel free to use that email. Take it away, Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Jason. You know what, when we talked about setting up this webinar, you know, the thing that we really wanted to accomplish was to let individuals feel like they knew someone in the industry who just give them the straight dirt. You know, there are different options for a reason, but sometimes people don't know all their options, or they really struggle with how to choose among them. And I really think Jason did a great job of helping you see how to start to navigate that process. But we also know a lot of people, just at the end of the day, they're like, well, this is my situation. This is my unique, you know, coinkydink of what I need to do. And even though you gave me all this great information, I'm still not really sure. So the best thing then to do is to look at your situation specifically. So what we're offering is just for, a very unbiased opinion based on your own company's needs and situation. And you can just send us an email at info@rocktech.net. You can see it there on the screen. And these quick questions. So maybe what you might want to do right now is do a quick print screen on your computer and paste that into PowerPoint or Google Slides so that you have the pictures in front of you. And quite frankly, if you forget some of the questions, you know, we'll work with you. But basically, we just want to, you know, have you moved your infrastructure to the cloud? Have you moved your ArcGIS desktop to the cloud? Why did you move it, or why haven't you moved it? Are you envisioning some hurdles that you just, it's kind of got you paralyzed? Like, maybe we need to chat about those and what are they, and just take the stigma away from those. Which ArcGIS for desktop version do you have? That'll be important for us to know. How many licenses do you have, and are they concurrent use? And then we'd need your phone number so that we can give you a call and give you your assessment. And like we said, you know, I'm sure you can hear it from Jason in his voice. His love for all of this is sincere, and it's about really pairing one company with the right solution. And we hope in a lot of instances it'll be RockTech, but we also know that there will be other instances where somebody else might be a better solution for you. So just, you know, take advantage of the fact that you've got an expert who can talk you through this. And we hope that we hear from you. And like I said, then we'll schedule a call to help you with your options. So that's all. It's not complicated at all. Just answer those questions in an email to us, and we'll schedule a call. So that's really it. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, feel free to ask me a question right now if you like. I'd be more than happy.
Looks like we've got one. Let's see here.
Oh, I think somebody was giving us a tip that you can actually screen capture with GoToMeeting.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. All right, so look at everybody's giving information. We're all sharing here today. I don't see any other questions, so
yeah, feel free. Definitely feel free to get in touch. Like I said, I really do like talking about this stuff. It's sad but true. I really love talking about virtualizing software and hardware. So please, you know, feel free to get in touch. Be more than happy to help. All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.